So as a disclaimer for this video, I am not a medical doctor. I'm not a naturopath. I'm not a medical professional of any kind. I'm just a guy who likes to work out, who has personal experience. I myself have the genetics to have high blood pressure. And there's some people, or some cases, if you do powerlifting or strongman, especially in the heaviest weight class, that blood pressure will be an issue. Just because you're big doesn't mean you're going to have it. I know many big guys who have healthy blood pressure, and I've met many skinny guys who have high blood pressure. Blood pressure is not something you can find out just by how you feel. There are no symptoms for high blood pressure, unless it's like severely high, and then you might know something unusual. For this video, I'm going to be talking about methods I use to keep mine in a healthy range, or in a range that I am willing to do really heavy lifts and not be as concerned. In one of my previous videos, I've mentioned I had blood pressure 150/90 in 2009. I felt exactly the same as in 2007, 2008 with excessive sweating. I also had very high body weight and also ate very unhealthy. And then in 2012, when I cut down my training, but I also had another weight gain, I also noticed one time I had a blood pressure reading of 160/90. And I know some of you are trying to avoid blood pressure medication. My goal is not to take blood pressure medication at all. I want to be able to live the life I live right now. I want to be able to exert myself without worrying about potential heart problems. So here are my top methods that seem to work for me. And this is based on my own measurements. So the first one is learn to have ketogenic meals at times. So if that means you might do some days completely ketogenic, or if you do breakfast ketogenic. Having a constant elevation of insulin from eating carbs. I noticed that myself. Every time whenever I had carbs, my heart rate, my blood pressure went up. I one time had an ice cream, and then I went to go donate blood, and the blood pressure reading was 160/90. It was at the end of the day after work. When you do a ketogenic diet, you gotta have good quality fats, the right ones that will optimize your health. And you gotta optimize the amount of protein you take per meal. Now, ketogenic meals do help, but you also have to eat clean foods as well, whether it's carbs or no carbs. I know right now my blood pressure is slightly higher from eating unhealthy carbs at the end of the day versus the times I was eating healthy carbs. So there was one point in my life I would eat potatoes, fruits, rice, and I would avoid foods that contain wheat and processed sugar. But I don't do that now, but I do know that my blood pressure is slightly higher, but not in an unhealthy range. Another tip that actually works for me is to get good quality magnesium supplements. So do thorough research on the type of magnesium supplements to get. I don't buy the cheap quality ones, and there's only two types I would personally take. The ones I would look for are the ones that have high amounts of absorption, not the ones that make you go to the bathroom all the time. The ones I would look for are magnesium glycinate. I find those ones have a high absorption. Another tip is to balance out your omega-3s, omega-6 ratios. Because of the North American diet, the omega-6 ratio is very high. So I personally buy good quality fish oil that contains good quality omega-3s. Another tip is I'm not going to do a low salt diet. I've read some things that if you do a low salt diet, not only you can actually feel more tired, but if the blood pressure actually goes down, it may not go down that much. So to me, it doesn't really make sense to greatly reduce your salt intake just for a few points to go lower. The only thing I would do is change the type of salt you're taking. Avoid the processed salt and go with natural Himalayan salt or Celtic salt. Those are the two I take. I put little bits of it in my drinks to get all the electrolytes and to improve hydration. And I don't see my blood pressure numbers going up anyways. Another tip is consume beetroots on a regular basis. Beets are actually really good for blood flow. It's good for iron. I take it myself because I heard it was great for working out. I am a blood donor, so I take it for iron and for improving the blood profile. Another tip is to get sufficient sleep. Some people might get away having a healthy heart and only sleep 5 hours. But if you can't get away doing that, then sleep 7 to 8 hours or whatever feels good for you and stay energized. And the final tip I have is minimize the use of caffeine products or any other stimulants. Caffeine makes your blood pressure go up temporarily, but it's also very addictive as well. And I noticed that myself too. Whenever I used to drink a lot of coffee, I had much higher blood pressure numbers on the machines. And then when I didn't have coffee for a day, the numbers were lower. But everyone is different. There are people that have healthy blood pressure while they drink like 3 cups of coffee. And then there's some people they might have a temporary spike, or some people have a much longer spike, even just drinking 1 cup. So these are some things you have to check yourself to determine what will work for you to optimize blood pressure. Now, I'm not going to tell you guys to avoid exerting yourself at the gym to avoid blood pressure spikes. I exert myself at the gym because I like the exercise. I like the feel of doing it. My blood pressure today while donating blood was 112/65. And I just checked it at home earlier in the day before a workout to see how overtrained I was. And it was still like in the 120s over 70. Before I forget, I think this actually helps, but it depends on how well you can tolerate it and how unhealthy your blood pressure is. And that is gradually work towards taking cold showers. Because I've noticed there are times I felt a little bit stressed. I take a cold shower, I feel great. Stress is gone. There are times my heart rate was like 75. I go take a cold shower, and then my heart rate's like 50.